We spend, um, we'll try to get out to visit each business every 3 or 4 months. And the one thing that we have to do while we're there is share a meal together, because that is one of the ultimate trust transfer transactions that you can have, right?
Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, for the life of me, we cannot get this podcast recorded, so we are going back to Zoom because Riverside is acting crazy. This is what happens when two redheads get together. But I got my man, Mr. Brooks, in the house. Mark Brooks, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good, Austin. How are you, brother?
I'm doing good, man. I appreciate your patience. For whatever reason, the internet, the websites, the platforms, technology helps us, but it also hurts us.
Yeah.
So
no worries.
Awesome. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you are about, and we'll just kind of get it started from there.
Yeah, sure. So I work for an organization called Permanent Equity, and we are technically a private equity firm, but we're pretty different from traditional private equity. So our fund life is 27 years instead of the typical 7 to 10. So we kind of like to say that we buy businesses with no intention of selling. We're long-term buyers and holders of typically family-held, family-run businesses. So we kind of talk about ourselves as like the next generation of capital for a business, kind of generational capital partner. So we don't use transactional debt. So we are all equity investors in those businesses. And we really like to come alongside those businesses as a partner. So we don't do boards and we don't do board meetings. We do kind of like weekly or bi-weekly calls with our CEOs. It's just kind of like, how are things going? How can we be helpful? What are you excited about? What are you worried about? What's keeping you up at night? And how can we help with those sorts of things? So I have the privilege of running the ops side of Permanent Equity. So my team is the one that partners with the CEOs post close. So we kind of think of ourselves as like a board in a box type of thing, even though we don't really do boards of directors. So we are counselors and confidants and consultants and coaches and all kinds of fun stuff wrapped into one. Basically, we never want any of our CEOs to feel like they're going it alone. We know that leadership is really lonely. And so having someone there to do everything from talking through like a 5-year strategic plan to blowing off steam because somebody didn't show up for a third day in a row. We want to be there as a partner in whatever way we can be helpful.
And because the anxiety of a private equity firm that's on a 3 to 5, 7 year turn,
Yeah.
it feels like a treadmill that you never get off of. And what I would think, since you're in the long term game, not only the company that you're going to marry yourself to, but I would imagine that hiring and long term hiring and making sure you have the right fit is so important because it's such a different culture.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it affects our acquisition process also because with a lot of these folks, we kind of like to say we're looking for folks who care what happens next, who care what happens next. And a lot of that is wrapped up in the team that they've built. Like they want to keep their team in place. So we're not really doing like massive churn on the management team, replacing everybody and all that kind of stuff. Like we're typically rolling with the folks that are there already. And so knowing that some of them, most of them are younger than I am, right? So they're going to be around. We're going to be working together for a long time. So getting to know that team, not just as employees, but as individuals is super important because we are trying to build that long-term relationship with them because we anticipate partnering with them for a long, long time.
And I think what's interesting to get into your mechanics of you managing and everything, I've met a lot of people, and I swear, no matter what's happened, I've done 600 of these, and I've never had this happen before again.
Yeah.
So, but when I met you at the event at the Main Street Summit, I've never
Yeah.
met somebody that listens the way that you listen.
Mm.
Like there's listening, and then there's listening to really like listen. It's like even so far past that, it's ridiculous, right? Because you're genuinely like you genuinely care about what coming out of somebody's mouth. You're not looking to say that next thing, and it's very rare, especially in this day and age, to run into somebody like that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And I think that is just being around and making the opposite mistake enough times to learn. I mean, I think we spend 99% of our times in conversation waiting for our turn to go.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Especially folks like me who are more extroverted types of people and an external processor and all that sort of thing. My first trigger instinct is to talk more. And so it's just been years and years of walking away from
mm-hmm,
conversations with people and realizing that I didn't really learn anything about them. And I think a lot of that, um, there's just a lot of ego wrapped up in that, I think, where we want to feel like we have said something important and impactful and revelatory to the person that we're talking to. And when we're able to let that go and realize that there might be sort of an awkward pause between when they get done talking and when we say something, like this, it's a very American thing that we feel like, conversation has to flow constantly. Like
mm-hmm,
if you can get comfortable with that, skip of a beat in between, while you're processing what the person actually said, and then starting to think about what you're going to say next, and instead of spending, the entire time that they were talking, thinking about what you're going to say next. It's a
mm-hmm.
different way of carrying on conversation, but I think it's richer. And, part of the reason I love my job is all the different people that I get to interact with. So, we
Mm-hmm.
own 15 businesses now, and hopefully lots more in the future. And it's that many more people who you get involved in the life of, and that's a real privilege. So don't waste it making sure you're gonna sound good and have a sharp retort when they get done talking. Instead, spend it actually listening and getting to know them. And I don't do it perfectly. Gosh, I still struggle with it a ton. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm some
Yeah.
guru at this. It's a constant development process.
This is the number one thing I'm working on right now. We were in a meeting with my mentor, one of my business partners, and
Yeah.
we were at Thomas's place, LP Capital in Austin,
Yep.
and we walked out, and he's because he's dealt with this in the past, and he said, so you could have talked about 40% less, and you could have never talked. He's like,
Yeah.
and all of it would
Yeah.
have been good. He's like it didn't matter either way, but he's like, and then the next day, sitting around the table, there was like, 5 billion at the table at lunch. And I didn't say a word like the whole time, but you're just sitting there and you're listening and you're picking up on things. And it's very hard to me because I'm used to being the kind of guy in the room,
The
but you're getting
moderator.
in these,
Yeah.
yeah, you're getting in these different rooms now where a lot of these people have tons of experience, big funds and stuff like that. So I get what you say, but even with the employees, like I'll give you of all people would love this more than anything. So there's a guy that we hired that came from a rough upbringing, like really didn't have a father figure, like a little rough around the edges.
Mhm.
He's like took a chance on me, and I took a chance on him, and like he's our number one installer now, and like he's amazing, right? And I wanted
Yeah.
to give him a raise, like we were going to give him a raise, and he was going to be in charge of something. And I
Yeah.
told my COO, and he said, "Well, that's great, but I think his manager should do it." And I was fuming for like an hour. He's like, "I get why you want to do it, but wouldn't it be better for the company longevity if he does it?" And I was like, "You're right. You're right.
Yes.
Yes, you're
Yeah.
so right."
Yeah.
But I understood what he was saying. But then I realized like I wanted that hey, look at me, look what I gave you. But really, if you want to build a company that sustains what you are building, you really have to elevate those people and kind of let them go.
Yeah, for sure. I think the other thing that's been helpful to me in that regard is I have, since taking this job about 4.5 years ago, um, I have been thrown into so many situations where I am the dumbest person in the room about so many different things. So you know, one thing I didn't mention about permanent equities, we don't have an investment thesis outside of great businesses that know how to make money will continue to make money. So if you look at the 15 businesses that we own, they're all over the map. So since taking this job, I've onboarded, a business that its expertise is in airplane parts, and one that is in commercial waterproofing and fire stopping, and another one that makes picture frames, and another one that makes roller coasters. And there's like I don't know anything about any of this stuff when I come into the room for the first time. And it's a very humbling experience. And you have to really listen well in order to pick up on those things. And that's not to mention the literally dozens of other, management conversations that we've had with businesses that we didn't transact on, where you're starting from nothing on like some weird, software product that's deep inside of some industry, or an industrial services company, or that sort of thing. Like there's so much out there. I think one of the joys of my job is getting to meet people who have figured out so many different weird ways to make money that I would never be smart enough to think of, and
Mm-hmm.
getting to learn from them how they did that, and then partner with them to help them figure out how to grow it is super fun. But again, it comes back to this fundamental principle that if you're not willing to listen first and admit that you know nothing about a particular subject, or business, or a person, that's kind of where learning starts, is being willing to let go of ego and just listen well.
Guys, let me take a minute to tell you about my buddies over at Lead Hub, Ben and Aaron, the best humans I know. Not only are they amazing at marketing for trade companies, but Ben started his HVAC company in his garage, sold it for multi-million dollars. So when this guy talks, I listen. When we took over Dietz Mechanical, we had 22 reviews in 22 years. In 7 short months, we went from 22 reviews to 107. We went from a 4.2 to a 4.7. We tripled our Facebook presence, and we tripled our calls. If you're an HVAC, plumbing, electric, landscaping company, and you're looking for a no BS approach to marketing, you're looking for people who have done it before, you got to go to leadhub.net.
From a human psychology level, because my joke is if me and like one of my buddies put together a dance studio, like it would be the best dance studio. Like I'm business agnostic. Like it really doesn't matter to me. Like same as y'all.
Yeah.
But I wonder, right? There was a report out. David Goggins was on with Andrew Huberman, and there was a study that came out where when you do hard things, or when you try hard things, or you have discipline, or you run hard, like there's a part of your brain that's bigger, right? Than
Yeah.
not. I wonder if it makes your team that much more elite, because there are so many different issues and you have to problem solve at the highest level. And it really provides a group of humans that are problem solvers by nature.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And I think what we see on our team is, when you're trying to draw parallels between executive matchmaking and glass curtain wall and Amazon advertising software, like it's pretty abstract. Like the things that
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to learn and apply across other
Mm-hmm.
businesses
Mm-hmm.
are pretty esoteric. So I think it does stretch the brain muscle
Sure.
a little bit to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I am a big believer in the liberal arts, and I think
Yeah.
I think getting exposure to lots of different things helps your mind expand. And so I'm grateful, God bless the people who are out there, rolling up veterinary clinics and car washes and stuff like that. It's not really my jam. Like honing something, to
Mm-hmm.
the nth degree is
Mm-hmm.
not really my thing. So I'm really grateful that I get exposed to all this different weird stuff and, get paired up with people who are really, really good. One of the interesting things that we find, in our work is one of the questions we get is, hey, you've got someone who founded this business, 30 years ago, and you're writing them a great big check, and they're going to still be the CEO of the business. Aren't they less motivated when they come in on day one because they just got this big
Mm-hmm.
check? And we actually find two things pretty consistently. One is that they're way less stressed. Like they have way more mental bandwidth to actually
Yep.
think about the business itself instead of
Mm-hmm.
their personal position in the business. And, waking up in the
Mm-hmm.
night sweats, when you're
Mm-hmm.
63
Yeah.
years old and realizing 99.9% of your net worth is tied up in this one thing can be pretty stressful.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. And the second thing that I think is really cool is as most of these folks started a business because they discovered something really interesting and
Yeah.
unique about
Yep.
the
Yep.
industry or sub
Mm-hmm.
industry that they're in. And they were so passionate about it that they started a business. And then the business grows and they get to 10 employees and they get to 20 employees and they get to 50 employees. And now they're doing more HR stuff than they are the thing that they really started out
Sure.
being good at. And
Mm-hmm.
most of them are like they're principals in nature and not necessarily managers. So the fact that they get to like go back to their first love
Yeah.
and really dig in on that thing that they were so passionate about that they took a huge personal risk to found a business on it. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's like they kind of like get rejoyful about their business because they get to refocus on that industry specific thing that they discovered at the beginning, and they've got help now as we bring resources to bear and that sort of thing to handle all the stuff that they've just taken on out of necessity throughout the years, that they can now kind of slough off as we build up the management team around them, and they can focus on that little
Mm-hmm.
nugget that they founded a business on so long ago.
It reminds me about the analogy, that story about the businessman and the fisherman, right? Like where,
Yes.
like it's kind of that thing, right? Because I and I'll use it for my context, like I can sell anything, but like the complexity to designing and engineering commercial HVAC
Yeah.
is mind numbing. Like we're doing a job like the thing's been in there since 1880, like 5 stories, like
Yeah.
the amount of complexity and the system that needs it. Like there is some beauty to this like game, right?
Oh, sure.
And that's cool. But then there's the 9 bajillion things you have, the lawyer, the HR, the all those things. So like
Yeah.
what I find when you talk to a lot of older especially guys that love design like the HVAC, they've like there was a thing that they started with that they loved, and then somehow in the middle it all got terrible, and they're like, I don't want to do any of this stuff, and then you
Yeah.
have to trust somebody else, right? And so that's why this is so important, because you've taken an idea they had, you get them the resources, they get to do what they love, and then now their legacy gets to continue on, right?
Yeah.
There's something I heard when you were on Fort podcast, because it's something I've been rolling around with. A lot of people say they're people first organizations,
Hmm.
and I'm all about that, and that's the way we are too. But there's people first, and then there's being a doormat. And I think like that's where people get it twisted. They think people first is all kumbaya. But when I say people first, it sounds to me it feels like accountability,
Hmm.
like in every way. Like how do you like obviously I don't I mean you might not say it on your website, but you care about your people. How do you be people first but not be a doormat where you're just getting run over and getting held hostage?
Yeah, I mean there are trade-offs there for sure. I would say that we're relationship first.
Okay.
And you know what we want to do is you know I talked a little bit about the trust bank. So you need to be
Mhm.
making deposits in the trust bank because one of these days you're going to need to make a withdrawal, and
Mhm.
you don't want to have to do it on credit, on trust credit. So uh, so, you know, we spend you know, we'll try to get out to visit each business every 3 or 4 months. And the one thing that we have to do while we're there is share a meal together. Because that is one of the ultimate trust transfer transactions that you can have, right? So
Mhm. Mhm.
I think that's super important. I am coming around to your question, but
Sure.
what we want to do is make sure that we're making those deposits in the trust bank, and not in
Mhm.
a, again, it sounds transactional. It's not in a transactional way. Like we want to be building a strong relationship for when the inevitable storm does come.
Mhm.
We're going
Mhm.
to have a
Mhm.
disagreement.
Mhm.
The economy is going to have a downturn. We're going to have to lay people off, you know, at some point. Like there is a and those are the really tough things when when you haven't built up that trust basis. Like when you've made it clear from day one that it's all about the numbers and not
Yeah.
about people, it's really hard to have a conversation about anything but the numbers. But when you have demonstrated that you care about folks, you know, as a person, and you know, when you are shooting them texts of like, hey, thinking about you during the big meeting today, you know, that sort of a thing. Like there's a difference in being relationship first. I think you can being people first is great and a great aspiration. But again, if you're people first, you're going to make decisions that will eventually endanger the business. So
Mhm.
if you can demonstrate that your relationship first, that you want to maintain that relationship, um, then I think you buy yourself a lot of trust that you can then draw on when you need to, when times get lean, which they inevitably will.
And I think your trust bank is such a good point. I learned a lesson. There's a certain lessons you put your hand in the tiger cage and you get bit off. I have a lot of ideas. I'm very excitable. A lot of those ideas take long time to form.
Yeah.
Um, and if you say them out of your mouth in front of your employees and you don't do them, you will be in trouble. So
Yeah.
I have a hard and fast rule: no half full ideas come to the fruition. This happened to me. I We canceled a company barbecue because we were busy, and then I got reamed by my managers like a couple weeks later, and I'm like, "You're giving me this hard time about a barbecue," but like to them, to your point, it meant everything, and it was great ever since we had it,
Yeah.
and those are a lot of the things. And I wasn't doing it on purpose. We just got busy and it got pushed around,
Sure.
but those are the things that a lot of people overlook to get capital. But when you say relationship based instead of people based, to me, that feels more malleable as an owner and a business owner, because what you're saying is a relationship is 50-50. And you got to meet me halfway if I'm going to meet you halfway. And I think
Yep.
not living in that fear of saying, we lost a lot of knowledge in our company. But I told my COO, I said, I have a feeling that if you give the young guys the opportunity, they're not going to be perfect. I said, but if you give them that space to step up and just tell them flat out, you're not ready. That's my new thing I've been doing. I
Yeah.
hired a I hired a 20-year-old project manager, the smartest kid I've ever met in my entire life. I was going to hire for this other role, and I literally said in the interview, "You're not ready." I said it to him 3 times. I said, "This is 4 years too early for you, but we're going to give you a chance. See if you
Yeah.
do it." And
Yep.
he's knocked it out of the park
Yep.
because because we gave. Hey, well, they don't think I'm good enough. Like that's what we fear about. But it's like, no, just gotta tell them what's what. And but I believe in you because I spent a lot of my time in hospitality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you worked at really nice restaurants, they had a rule. If you waited tables for more than 10 years, they wouldn't hire you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They said, because you have so many bad habits past 10 years, we don't want to hire you.
Mm.
So I'd rather hire them young and then get them indoctrinated into our culture, right? Like
Yeah.
I talk to people like you. I interviewed a guy yesterday, Ken Russ. Like I would give everything right now. I'm 41. I would give everything to stop what I'm doing, go back to 18, and just work for y'all. And just work for y'all and
Yeah.
learn and listen and hear and go to meetings that I shouldn't be in and just grow. Like we discount, and I felt it at the event that y'all put on, that Brent
Mm-hmm.
put on. We're missing community in business. That's what we're missing. And when you get
Yeah.
with a company that has accountability, love, empathy, they want to show up. Like when you came on board, like was that already there, or has it grown from when all these great pieces came together?
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's been there from the beginning. I think,
Okay.
Brent really, he started off as an entrepreneur and built, three businesses in kind of the marketing and advertising space, and then bought a business in the similar space. And so he's always had, Emily has basically been around from the beginning. Lori and Sarah on the finance side have been around almost since the beginning. And so that sense of community and caring, I think is important. I think we ought to be careful about calling businesses families
Yeah.
because they're not. Uh,
Yeah.
I think they're a great business is like a really great sports team. So there is a very collegial nature, and I think as you build teamwork and connection, I mean, I'm sure you've run into this. Like there are people that you have worked with in the past that you absolutely would have stuck your neck out for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you would have run
Mm-hmm.
into
Mm-hmm.
traffic for those people, and that's great. The thing that's different about a family is that you are welcome inside of a family. Well, I should say a healthy family, regardless of performance. And that's the analogy with the sports with a high performing sports
Mm-hmm.
team is that part of the interconnectedness, part of the shared experience, and part of the trust is because it is so fun to perform at a high level
Sure.
together. So
Sure.
you go and look at like the great sports teams, who won championship after championship. Like there was a connectivity amongst the individuals on that team that came from elite performance. And so that's I think we do have that connection and that care for each other, but
Sure.
it is more like a sports team than it is
Sure.
a family, which is an important
Oh,
distinction.
I would imagine there's some chirping when somebody finds a business or like gets the big contract. Like, of course, right? Um, like my guys never had like goals ever. Like they never had them. Like they don't know what they are. Like I had to teach them
Yeah.
like everything. But like we set a goal for one of the guys who used to be our lead tech, now sales guy, and I tried for the life of me to get him to double the goal at the beginning of the year because he's really good.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Yeah.
January 16th. I think he's already 33% through the goal. And he goes, well, I'm going to be about 40% up through it by February. And I said, so you know what I'm going to do to you, right? I'm going to make you go. But like the thought of like that even happening even hitting the first goal, never, like I could never do this. Now he's going to, 2X it. And
Yeah.
like that, and he's rivaling with his sales manager, right? And there's, we've kind of pushed competition out of society, or it's not good or whatever, but like let's be honest, like what do they say when you get in a relationship? You put on about 10 pounds,
Yeah.
but then the spouse starts working out and you're like, hold on,
Yeah.
I need to
I gotta
start,
keep up. Yeah.
I gotta keep up. Right.
Yep.
And so, now I'm just chasing like podcast episodes. It's like, all right, I'm just going to keep going, and so like, you have to find these little games because, frankly, the day-to-day grind can be myopic by nature,
Yeah.
especially uh, if you're so disciplined in the deals, right? And I think that's something that's not talked about enough, to wait for a great business and then to not just do deals like that. That behavior is something that I study on a regular basis. I have a buddy, probably one of my best friends. He used to work at Goldman Sachs. He works at UT Endowment now. When COVID hit, they have a $50 billion fund. When COVID hit, they were minus 50 billion in losses. All right. So I love to talk to him. Like, what's your mood? He's like, well, I just had my first kid. We're working from home. It's a complete nightmare. He's like, but we got to get to work. And then so I talked to him like 8 months later, and they were up 50 bill. And I'm
Yeah.
like the amount, like, they were at each other, like, oh, and that's probably what got him back, was that like team, and I just find that is not studied enough. And you said it on a post the other day. You gave me so much freedom to say, if your business is people, then that's what you should be studying. Like,
Yeah.
it's one sentence, but it's like the freedom in that one sentence is like so important, because we don't allow, like, you're great at what you do, you're allowed to get better at what you do. They're not
Right.
asking you to go out and run sales.
Yeah. Thank goodness for that. Yeah. I think, and I think that, I mean, it brings up a point. You're talking about kind of egging each other on and that sort of thing. And I think when you can build that into your incentive structure,
Mm-hmm.
that's really important. So one of the best examples I've seen of this was a manufacturing business that we did not end up doing a deal with, but they had built this really interesting incentive structure. So it's your typical kind of job-based manufacturing site. So, site A does this thing, and then they push it down the
Mm-hmm.
line, and site B adds value, and then
Yeah.
they push it down, and site C adds value, that sort of thing. And they started off where everybody was just making an hourly rate, and that gave them one level of productivity. And so then they added a bonus for productivity within your site. So like site A had these performance goals, and if you beat those performance goals, everybody got X incremental dollars every week. And so what happened was they had these big, carts with the piecework on it. And so they would take them, and then they would just like, they were trying to get so much done, they would just shove them down to the B site, and everything is like disorganized and the paperwork is everywhere. And so the site B folks actually had to spend more time like rearranging that stuff and getting it ready for their value add segment. And so
Mm-hmm.
they added another incentive for the productivity of the site that was downstream of yours. And you wouldn't believe what happened next. Those carts were lined up in perfect order. The paperwork was right where they needed it to be, along with any special instructions that they needed to know about this batch versus this batch. And then they added on top of that one for the productivity of the overall plant. And that's when everything started clicking. So I think they estimated that they increased their productivity somewhere between 2.5 and 3x. And they certainly did not have to 2.5 or 3x payroll to do it. So there's, even on large teams like that one, I mean, they had
Yeah.
several dozen employees working on the floor there. If you can figure out how to create incentive systems that incentivize that teamwork, then
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think it can really reinforce like, this is the type of culture that we want to build here. We want you working together. We
Mm-hmm.
want you for the other the other guy or gal
Yeah.
downstream from you. And it can really produce some very cool stuff.
It reminds me of like the Henry Ford thing when he went to 24-hour shifts and they wrote how many cars they did in the morning and then the
Yeah.
night crew wrote. We actually had a similar situation. They had no incentives. Sales guys are getting commission. We actually incentivized hitting the project number on the days that we allowed for it. And
Okay.
then we incentivized all the way down to the project manager. And it got police central because the sales guys were fighting with the installers 24/7.
Yeah.
You didn't set me the job up right, and you didn't do this, and you took too many days. As soon as we incentivized both sides of it,
Yep.
it was amazing.
Yeah.
And there's a quote out there. I can't think of it because Andrew Wilkinson talks about incentives, and Warren Buffett talks about it all the time. Like your business will be as productive as your incentives are, or something like that, somewhere in
Yeah.
that. And it
Yeah.
really is like because I'm the same way. Like there's a lot of days. I just want to sell it off. I want to get in my car and I just want to be a salesman for somebody. I want to be a mercenary and I
Yeah.
don't want a salary. I don't want any ceilings. Like just like Tommy Boy, just send me out on the road and let me close. And there'd be so much freedom in that because there's no ceiling and you earn with it's such a different game, right? But you can do that all the way through. They talk about it all the time in call centers and HVAC places where they're incentivizing in these. Now the people answering phones are making like we changed our CSRs 50 days ago. We went from 40 to 60% booking rate to 100%, 45 days
Okay.
in a row.
Okay.
And I'm like, look, you can have whatever you want. Do you want my house? Would you like my car? Like,
Yeah.
and this is the lead plumber's wife. I'm like, just so you know, Andy, I was like, your wife is more valuable than you now. I love you all the same, but she's amazing,
Yeah.
but like we want to like, hey, thank you for working hard, right? And that's where we realize that these incentives and what you're talking about, it can be fun. It can be fun. Like the one we want to do next year is a hunting trip to Montana. Like all my guys are like crazy hunters. Like
Yeah.
we sent three of them to a Pittsburgh game. They're obsessed with the Steelers, but that was a vendor trip that the owners were supposed to go on, but I sent them instead. And my vendor's like, why? And I'm like, because I don't care about football, and they're very excited about it.
Yeah.
And they never got to go in a suite. Like that's the kind of stuff. Like, but they earned it. Like they're managers and
Yeah.
they've been killing it. So
Yep.
when you find that mix, it's just so much fun. It doesn't have to be so monotonous every day when you
Yeah.
show up.
Yeah. Totally agree. Totally agree.
So I got a question because I have talked to you a couple times now, and you seem like the most even keeled, like I don't get upset guy, and I just don't believe it. Okay. Uh, do you ever get like fiery? Is it indifferent? Is it internally? Like, do you ever get like riled up? Because I'm like, me, like my stuff's right here, on the sleeve, and
Yeah.
do you ever, or is that just something that you've cultivated over the years, or you're working to cultivate out of you?
Um, do I get angry at work, you mean?
Like, do you like something like you lose a big deal, or like, do you need to like walk it
Oh,
off? Is what I'm saying.
oh, yeah. I mean, not I think I view the world as very, very unpredictable. So
Okay.
so I'm not a 5-year plan guy. I'm not a 3-year
Okay.
plan guy. I kind of like take each day the way that it's going to come. So, of course I get my hopes up about things, but I find I probably get more sad than angry about that stuff.
Sure.
I think the thing that gets me probably fired up is I have a little bit of an elevated sense of justice, and so when someone
Hmm. Hmm.
intentionally like tries to cheat us or say that they're going to do one thing and does and
Hmm.
does another,
Yeah.
like that's probably where I get the most fiery. I'm not like I don't have a large charge. I'm kind of a long fuse, small charge
Sure.
kind of a
Hmm.
guy. And maybe having 4 kids helps me with that. I've got I've got way more stressful
Yeah.
things in my life. But yeah, that's I would say the thing that I emotionally that I struggle with most at work is having leaning into conversations that I know are going to strain or
Mm,
break a relationship. Like
mhm,
because those are so valuable to me, and because we do invest so much time getting to know people and taking care of them and that sort of thing. So when those hard times do come, like you and I were talking about earlier,
mhm, mhm,
having to have
mhm,
those conversations of resetting expectations, giving someone bad news about their personal compensation, giving somebody bad news about needing to trim down a department or, something like that. Like those are the things that really grind on me. And uh, there's a thing that I say sometimes, which is um, business is business without caring about people is short-term easier and long-term worse. Business with caring about people is short-term harder, but long-term better.
mhm,
And
mhm,
I think that having to remind myself of the long view of that is something that I have to do fairly often because if you think about the job that we have, we get to get involved in all kinds of cool growth stuff and that sort of thing. But most of the time, we're not the ones that come up with the ideas. We're just there for
mhm,
support. So the stuff
mhm.
where we have to lean in on usually isn't like the super pleasant stuff.
No.
So knowing that, as a highly relational person that values those relationships, reminding myself that, hey, it's business is still like you were talking about earlier around community, needing community in business. Like it's better when you care about people long term. Short term, it's harder. Like if I just
Mhm,
think about each CEO as as a social security number, or a salary number on a spreadsheet or something like that, man, short term, that would make my life so much easier, and I would be the
mhm,
loneliest,
mhm,
most miserable business
mhm,
person ever by not
mhm,
valuing those relationships and growing them over time. So it's a trade-off. Like you can take a bunch of short-term pain, but be way happier long term that you cared about people and took good care of them. Or you can treat people like crap short term and be completely lonely for the rest of your life when it comes to business. So it's really deciding which one you want to be. So to your original question, the thing I don't struggle with anger as much as I do just anxiety around having really difficult conversations with people. And it's something that I'm 45. It's something I still struggle with. It's something that I still aspire to get better at is those hard
mhm.
conversations.
Yeah, it's the truth. I just told my team today, especially my office people, I said, your job is not to deal with the angry. I said, that's my job.
Yeah.
And it's,
Yeah.
and secretly, I don't mind it because like I have this like weird thing where I love to make angry people happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that is like, this is, it's really weird because like it's so ridiculous how angry they are about a company. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we decided to do is I wanted you to give me a 1-star review. I wanted you to be pissed off at me. That's what I woke up today, and I decided that
Yeah.
I
Right.
wanted to tell you to f you, and
Yeah.
that's what we decided to do. So I'm very excited that you want to come. That's where I'm thinking in my mind, and I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, so I'm like, it's really blue today, and they're like, what? They're like, no, I'm angry, and I'm like, yeah, but it's so blue today, and like they're just they can't handle it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They
Yes.
can't process. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I said I would never want to put you. That's what I told them today. I never want to put you in a position where you feel scared. I said with anybody in the company. I said it's not your job to be scared. It's my job to make it less scared and
Yeah.
and protect you, right? And you're so right. So if people want to find out about permanent equity, they want to check out how would they do that?
Yeah. So we actually do a lot of writing about what we do and what we stand for. So you can go to permanentequity.com and we've got a content section there that you can filter by subject area and that sort of thing. So if you want to learn about operations, want to learn about investing, want to learn what we believe about incentives, like all that stuff, you can filter down and read some of our longer form essays. A lot of us are on Twitter. So Brent B. Shore, the founder of the firm, is on there, and really did a lot of the growth of the firm through his writing on Twitter, and met our original set of investors on Twitter also. So he's there. I'm there at Mark Brooks. Tim, our chief investment officer, is there at Tim Hansen without the N at the end. He had a username issue. And so we kind of post our ideas all the time. Tim, actually, I should mention, is getting ready to start his daily newsletter again. So he writes every day, writes a few paragraphs about something that he's thinking about on the investing or on the operations side. It's really good stuff. Recommend you sign up for it. It's called Unqualified Opinions. If you go to permanentequity.com, you can find all that stuff there. And yeah, I mean, we're looking for family-owned, family-run businesses that are looking for that next step. We'd love to partner with folks. So if you know of anyone, please send them our way.
So I'm gonna say this. So Mark, my producer, the other Mark, I want you to clip this out because I want to send it to the team over there. I've traveled a bunch. I spent 21 years in high-end hospitality, and when I say high, I'm talking about some of the best hotels and restaurants in the country.
Yeah.
And been to a lot of events. The attention to detail and the community and the aspects of the event that I went to, Main Street Summit in Columbia, was the best I've ever seen. And what I mean by that is it feels awkward a lot of times when you get a bunch of narrow-minded, driven entrepreneurs together, and they're trying to all check in at the same time. But everything was so great. There was nobody was rushed. Nobody was. It was just, I don't know. It was just great, and people. More importantly, the reason I know it was great was the speakers were happy to talk to whoever, and that meant to me like they were actually there for the right reasons. Like I got to talk to Andrew Wilkinson. Like let it be known that's my man crush. And he was the nicest guy I've ever talked to in my entire life. I got to meet Walker Deibel, who changed my life with his book, like just the best. But none of that could have happened if it wasn't done like amazingly. I know I can't think of the name. I'm sure you could shout it out right off the top of my head. But the company that puts it on I told everybody
the Capital Camp team. They're great.
Yeah, I talked to everybody. I was shaking their hand. I was like, dude, just wow. Like, and it's not like it's easy. It's in like 20 different places. So just overall, everybody said great event. So if you do next year, if you're looking for an entrepreneurship event and you want to go to something, this is the place to be. Trust me. It's a cool, you can get Airbnb, you can get a hotel downtown. It's really accessible. It's really weird to be in a city where you don't feel like you're being inundated from 90 different directions coming from Austin or Dallas. But I just wanted to say that because it meant it was really cool. It was a really cool event. So
I appreciate that. It's very high praise, and we love that team and think they do a really incredible job. So appreciate it.
Awesome. And the Scott guy about the water, he's not allowed to speak ever again because all I do is cry when he speaks. That guy blew it out of the water. And then David Perel, who I'm loving his podcast. So just so much good stuff. It's But guys, if you like this episode, send it to a friend, share it with somebody to get some value, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, Austin.